Kiddushin Daf Mem Vav concludes the Gemara's discussion about a Kitana being Makabel Kiddushin for herself. And then we quickly get to our next Mishnah, which we've already seen quoted in the Gemara, discussing if you have less than a Shavar Pruta in multiple Keddushins, can they combine together into one? So let's begin. The Gemara is discussing the halachas of a Kitana who is being Makabel Kiddushin. We know that she is not supposed to be Makabel Kiddushin, her father is. We said we're concerned that if she is Makabel Kiddushin Shalela Dasavia without her father's knowledge, that possibly the father will agree when he finds out about it, and that will make it into a Kiddushin Deraisa. So the Gemara discusses who can block this Kiddushin from taking place. Obviously, the father can, because he can say, I don't agree, and you need the father's agreement as long as she's a Ketana. Question is, what if she pulls out before the father finds out about it, before we know what the father's opinion is? Can she cancel and say, I changed my mind? So the Gemara says, seeing as it hasn't been chal yet. So the Gemara says it's a machlokas between Rav and Ravasi. Rav says she could, or Ravasi says she cannot. So the Gemara says it was a kasha asked by either Rav Huna to Ravasi or Rav Chia bar Av to Ravasi. The pasuk discussing a mafuta, a woman who was seduced by a man, in which he has to marry her or pay her a knas. So there it says, if the father refuses to have the marriage go forward, then he has to pay the knas. So the Gemara says, ma'in yima'in. We quote a brisa that says that's the double lashon. Ma'in yima'in is to teach me not only can the father refuse, but she, the girl, can actually refuse herself. So the Gemara says, you see that the girl could refuse. So the Gemara answers no. That over there it's not talking about Kiddushin. There it's talking about a pitoy where he seduced her. And the havin was that seduction was a seduction l'shem Kiddushin. He was mafata her to do a bia l'shem Kiddushin. The Gemara is saying, no, this was a bia not for Kiddushin. So Gemara says if it's a bia that's not for Kiddushin, so then why do I need a pasuk to tell me that they can pull out? There was no Kiddushin here. What is there to cancel? And that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers the chiddush is that he still has to pay the knas if they cancel. That they can cancel and that the knas is still obligated. It says Rav Yosef, you can see this in the fact that it says Mahar Yimharen Alayla Isha, he has to give her a Meir Absilos, he has to give her the payment that goes with Kiddushin. If he already did a Kiddushin, if the Bia was a Shem Kiddushin, why would he have to be a Mahar Yimharena? And therefore that supports the fact that we are talking where this was Shaloi L'Shem Kiddushin. So that proof of biases is not such a proof. It could be that there's another Kiddushin required for the father, meaning the Mafata did a Bias Kiddushin for the girl, but maybe the father's not going to agree to that. You may have to give another Kiddushin for the father's agreement. Okay, this concludes the Gemara. Now we get to our next Mishnah, which discusses what happens if you give multiple Kiddushins and they're less than Shavar Pruta. Can it be combined into one Maisa Kiddusha of a Pruta? So the Mishnah contains one opinion, which splits the halakha according to how he expresses the Kiddushin. If he uses the word Kiddushin for each separate Nesina, he says, be miskadeshes to me with this, and be miskadeshes to me with this, and be miskadeshes to me with this, then each one is a separate Maaseh Kiddushin, and they don't combine. If however he says, be miskadesh to me with this, and this, and this, then it is one Maaseh Kiddushin, and they do combine. Says the Mishnah, if she ate them, she ate the first one, meaning if the Kiddushin was food, and she ate them, she ate the first one before she got the second one, then it doesn't combine anymore. And the Gemara will explain where that fits in. So we begin the Gemara. First, the Gemara wants to know who is the Tana of this Mishnah that says that there is a difference if you break up the Kiddushins with the word miskadeshes or hiskachi. The Gemara says that's Rav Shim's opinion, as we've seen in Masechah Shavuos, where he says you break up different Shavuos, different oaths with the word Shavua. So there he's referring to where somebody swears 5 times to 5 different people who claim he owes them money. He swears that he didn't owe, and he was lying on all of them. So when do we say it's 5 different shuas? When do we say it's all combined into one shua that I don't know any of you? So Shimon there said, if he said the word shvu to you and shvu to you and shvu to you, that breaks it up. If he just said shvu to you, to you, to you, that does not break it up and it's one. So same thing here. If you say the word iskachi, that's how it breaks up. Okay, so that's who the Tana of the Mishnah is. Now the Gemara wants to know this last line, that if she eats the first one before she receives the second one, then it's not miskadeshes unless the one has a Shava Pruta value So is that going on the first case where he said hiskachi on each one, or is it going on the second case where he only said hiskachi once? He said hiskachi with this and this and this. So the Gemara says that it couldn't be referring to the first case because over there it's not mikudeshes even if they're all in front of her. So what do you mean it's not mikudeshes if she eats them? Even if she doesn't eat them, it's not miskadesh. It can't be referring to the second case because if it's referring to the second case where he said bazu, 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 so why would we say that if one of the things that she's receiving is worth a shava pruta, she is mekudeshes? She does. If the first one she receives is worth a shava pruta, and she eats it, and the Kiddushin is not completed until he finishes giving it over, he finishes everything that he plans to give, and then it's over. That's much later, and by that time, the thing she ate, the Kiddushin, the date or whatever it was, is already gone. So all she has is a loan. You can't be mekadesh with a loan that she owes that she has to pay back. So the Gemara gives two answers. The Gemara says Rav and Shmuel answer that it's going on the first case, where he said hiskachi separately, and the chiddush is you may think that if it's less than a shava pruta, but she ate it right away on the spot, it shows that she agrees to the Kiddushin even though it's less than a shava pruta, or that she agrees that it combines. And therefore the chiddush is that even though she ate it, it's not Kiddushin. Not only if it's there, it's not a Kiddushin, but even if she ate it, it's not a Kiddushin. Now, the Gemara's second answer is Rav Ami, who says that we're referring on the later case where it's all combined as one. And Ayu asked that if it's a Shavar Pruta, why is it good if it's gone by the time the Kiddushin is finished? We're talking about the last one. If the last thing she got, let's say the last date that she got is worth a Shavar Pruta, then it's good because the Kiddushin ends as soon as she receives it, and it's challah right there on the spot. Okay, now says Rava, based on this halacha, this answer of Rav Ami, we could learn three halachas. The fact that Rav Ami agreed to the kasha that it would be mekadesh b'milveh if the first thing, the first tamar that she received is the one that was worth the pruta would be no good. You learn first of all that mekadesh b'milveh is no good because by the time he wants to do the kiddushin, all she has is that she has to return it. And that's just the milvah, that's the loan. So that's no good. That's why he has to give the answer that the third or the last item she received is the one that was worth the pruta. That's the first halacha. Second thing we see is that if she receives a pruta and a milvah, we assume that she's agreeing or assuming that the Kiddushin is the pruta, is the money. That's why when she receives the milvah from the first date and the pruta of the last date, that's where it is good. And the third halacha we see is that if somebody gives Kiddushin and the Kiddushin is void for some reason, the money is owed back. She has to pay it back. That's why we say the date that she got for the first one and the second one has to be paid back, and that's why it's called a milvah. Okay, now, the Gemara wants to go more deeply into this discussion. If somebody gives Kiddushin which is void, does she have to pay it back or not? So the Gemara quotes Machlek is Rav and Shmuel. Somebody gives Kiddushin to his sister, which is obviously not Tavis, it's void. Does she have to give it back or not? So Rav and Shmuel, Rav says she has to return it. Shmuel says she does not have to return it. Both agree that he knows that he can't be Mekadesh his sister, and he gave it to her for some other reason. Rav says he gave it to her as a pikadon, as something for her to hold temporarily, and the reason that he told her that it's Kiddushin is because otherwise she would not have accepted it. And Shmuel says he wants to give her a gift, and the reason that he said it was Kiddushin is because otherwise she would have been embarrassed by it. Now, Ravina asked a kasha on all this from a case of somebody who wants to be mafresh challah from flour. So if he separates challah, the halacha of challah is that you can't separate challah until you mix flour with the water and you make it into the dough. If it's just flour and you separate challah, it's not the shame challah on it at all. So we have a brayso that says that if somebody takes challah from flour and he gives it to the kohen is not allowed to hold it. He has to return it, and if he keeps it, it's stolen property. So one says, why? Well, you say the same thing. A person understands that you don't give challah from flour. The fact that he gave it to the kohen says he wants to give him a gift, and therefore let him keep it and call it challah. So the Gemara answers, you're right, we could do that, just like Rav and Shmuel said that by someone who gives his sister Kiddushin. But here, there's a problem if you do that, and that's the kohen thinks that he got flour, which is challah, was already separated from it, or it itself is challah. That because of that, it's not chayiv in the challah. And then he may be making his own dough, and he'll mix it in there, and the dough was not a shear to be mechayiv challah beforehand. The Gemara says the shear is 5/4. Rashi explains the cheshbon. And he'll add in this flour. Now all of a sudden it's a shear, and he thought that it's no problem that it's a shear. I don't have to give challah from it because the flour that I added in is not chayiv in challah because it was already challah. And now it's not true because it really was never challah. And now his entire dough is chayiv challah, and he won't know. So Gemara says, didn't you say that everyone knows that you can't take challah from flour? So the kohen will know. So the Gemara says, no, people know you can't take challah from flour, but they don't know the reason. They think the reason is because it's a tircha to the kain to go make a dough out of it. But here, the kain's meichel, so they will think that it is challah and it is works, and therefore the kain could just use it without being mitaken. So the Gemara asks, why is that a problem? You're afraid that the kain won't take challah from it. So why don't we say, okay, it becomes challah, it belongs to the kain. Maybe the kain will assume that it's already mitaken, so you say that you have to take challah again. You tell the kain you have to take challah again. And we find such a halacha. We find that you say such a thing. We find that if somebody separates truma from grain that grew in a flower pot without a hole, on grain who grew in a flower pot with a hole, so he took truma from something which is not chayiv in truma to try to potter something which is chayiv in truma, and it doesn't work. On that we say you give it to the kayin, it counts as truma, and you tell the kayin, Herzachayin, this is not chal truma on it, you have to take truma on it again. So we could do it there, why can't we do it here? I think our answer is because there you're talking about where the grain grew in two different flower pots, two different kalim, and the kain understands this was chayiv, this was not chayiv. Here you're talking about flour. This type of flour, that type of flour, this stage, this not stage, it's the same growth, it's the same grain. He won't accept that it has different halachas and is not going to be mafresh challah from it again. Now, the Gemara offers another answer to Ravina's original question, why is challah different than Kiddushin, and then we'll have the same discussion that follows. The Gemara says, we're not worried about the kayin. The kayin is going to understand, he has no concern. The problem is the balabayas, the Yisrael. We're afraid the Yisrael will think that his other challah that he took is nisakin, what he has left at home. And that's not true because the truma that he took off was no good because it was in the flour stage. So it's Yisrael worried about not the kain. So Gemara says again, but people know you can't take truma from flour. The Gemara answers they think it's because the kain is too big of a tercha from him. And this, there is mechila because the kain is happy to receive it. The Gemara answers it should be like truma, you should just inform him. And the Gemara answers again to that in two kalim you can say that, in one kli you can't. Now the Gemara asks another kasha. We have another situation where we don't make such a gzeira, where we're afraid that they'll assume that everything is matukin, and we say that you're allowed to leave it in the kain's possession. What about this gzeira? In this case is where somebody takes truma and it turns out that it was rotten. So he takes truma from a squash and it turns out to be bitter. Takes truma from a melon and it turns out to be rotten. And yet, so the halacha there is you took min hara al hayafa. You used bad produce to be mataking good produce. Not supposed to do that. We say that it stays. It's chal truma. The kain keeps it, and you have to go separate again. So why don't you have the same concern? If you allow the kain to keep it, he's going to assume that it was chal truma, and he's not going to be mataking it again. So our answer is no. Here midaraisa, it is truma. And that's what the kain thinks. That's fine. Everything is matukin. It's only the chachamim that said not to take bad fruit, and that the proof that it's only Midrabanan that the Torah says you shouldn't take bad stuff because it's going to be an Aveira. If it's not Chal, it's no Aveira. It just doesn't work. But the Aveira is only if it's Chal and he gave him the bad stuff. So therefore you see that it's Midaraisa, it's okay, and therefore there's no problem. I don't have to make a Zera to prevent the kind from assuming it's okay.